how getting mugged at knife point changed a 7-year-old girl, how to educate, empower, and employ underprivileged kids, and why the amazing Billy Wang uses stories to drive social change. All right. Hey ho, let's go. Hello, my legendary friends. This is Christopher Lochhead, and welcome to another legendary episode of Legends and Losers. And if you're new to the show, I want to welcome you with open arms, an open heart, and an open mind. And if you're a longtime listener, all I can say is there's just no excuse for that, really. Now, if you're new, I kind of got to warn you off the top. We are a different kind of show. We're a new category of podcast that you could think of as an authentic dialogue show. So rather than your traditional show, which most people consider an interview show, where you have a professional journalist with a narrative and a list of questions, and you have some extraordinary guest who's been incredibly well trained by their PR organization to deliver their talking points. And what you and I, as listeners, generally are subjected to when we check out CNBC or I don't want to name any names, but your traditional business media, what you get is the collision of a prefabricated narrative from the journalist and talking points from the guest. And they collide, and that's what you get. That's what most interview shows are. I said most. Some are absolutely amazing, and I love some of them. So I don't want to throw all interview shows under the bus, just most of them. What we aim to do here on Legends and Losers is different. We have what you could think of as an authentic dialogue show. And the point is to sit down with a truly extraordinary person and try to really get to know them and get to know all the things along the path that made them successful and the losery, so to speak, along the way, and have a real conversation, just two people sitting down over a coffee or a beer talking like human beings. And that's what we deliver to you here on Legends and Losers. We think you're smart enough to glean what the key talking points are and to really just dig in deep, because authentic conversations are what yield the most fascinating insights, not the prefabricated bullshit that most of us get fed on your traditional interview show. So that's Legends and Losers. Now, also want to let you know that the average person in our world has not enjoyed a podcast recently. So it turns out getting into podcasting is tough. You got to get on your phone. You got to figure out your podcast app. You got to look at a billion podcasts and try to figure out what you might like. And for some people, that's actually a very daunting thing. So if you are somebody who loves podcasts, I would ask you to be a podcast legend and introduce two people you love to two podcasts you love. Even if you have to take their tablet or their computer or their phone and show them how to look up iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or whatever it is, and then pick out a show and subscribe to it and get them going. If you have to do that, by all means, it'll make a big difference, and you will turn people onto podcasts that you love. And also today, on the back end of the show, I want to do some shout outs. We haven't done some thank you shout outs for a while, but want to start with one off the top to my dear friend Ramsey Smith. Ramsey and I worked together back in the .com days at Scient, and Ramsey has been with us on Legends and Losers since the beginning, and he was kind enough to send me a beautiful, gorgeous bottle of Sullivan's Cove whiskey from Australia. And so, Ramsey, I want to thank you for that. Very, very sweet, very unnecessary, but very much appreciated. All right, today's show. We have an incredible guest that you are going to love. And we had so much fun having this conversation. Her name is Billy Wang. And she couldn't be more inspiring, and she couldn't be more authentic. She's an entrepreneur. And she's an entrepreneur committed to making a gigantic difference in the world. Billy is good friends with our multi-time guest and my dear friend Dushka Zapata. And she's also married to an extraordinary guy that I knew years ago, Luca Panatti. And Luca is an incredible PR executive, longtime communications PR technology executive. And Billy started a nonprofit to try to make a difference. So let me tell you about her. She was raised as an immigrant or by an immigrant single mom in the projects of New York City. She grew up to achieve a tremendous amount. She got a double BA in engineering and economics from Brown University. She has a JD degree from Northwestern University and a teaching credential from San Francisco State University. She has this huge desire to share her mom's story and her immigrant story because she believes in the power of story to shape narrative, and to change the world. She's the founder and chief executive of a nonprofit outfit called BAYCAT. You can find them at baycat.org. And they are a social enterprise in San Francisco that's focused on helping young underprivileged people from typically low-income areas capture their stories and create social change. It's a school that in the last 10 years or so has educated close to 4,000 students, primarily in the area of storytelling, movie making, production, things along those lines. And so after 10 years, they've graduated over 4,000 students. And BAYCAT graduates today have gone on to work at some incredible businesses like Netflix, Lucasfilm, Pixar, HBO, Universal Studios, and other production companies. As well, corporations and nonprofits, different kinds of organizations come to BAYCAT to have BAYCAT students with their mentors from the media and production world, guiding them, produce media for them. So the students get real world experience, and the companies get video and audio and other media production done by some legendary, some legends in the making, if you will. Villy shares her story. It's a fascinating story. It's an inspiring story about how to make a difference. And so here she is, Villy Wang, on Legends and Losers.
And I think between, Mother Nature being so mad at us, Mother Earth, I think, is being so mad, and the hurricanes and the earthquakes and these fires, and with our clients, what's cool is they think about the whole picture. And they also think about, if we really designed the world for people with disabilities and thought about the fact that all of us at one stage of our lives is, all of us are pre-disabled, if you will, right? Whether we're a baby or later on, or you hurt something, or your ankle gets twisted and all of a sudden you can't walk, or you're pregnant and it's harder for you to move around. What if we designed the world for everybody that has less mobility? The world would be a better place for everybody. So we did this video, and they're actually premiering it at the MoMA, which is where they're having their big gala, and it's their first one in New York.
At MoMA in New York.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I'm excited.
The MoMA.
The MoMA.
The MoMA. Yeah. Not SF MoMA.
SF MoMA's cool.
MoMA.
Nothing wrong with SF, but it's
so the movie's debuting at MoMA.
Yeah.
And so you guys made the movie.
We made the movie. So we're excited to be there, but I don't know what to wear yet, Christopher. It's tomorrow. What do I do?
I know. What are you going to wear, Villy? Jeez. And what are you going to do with your hair? Well, tell me about what you're thinking.
What? No, you like my hair? Do you see my hair?
I see your hair. It looks great. Have you got your shoes picked out yet?
It's probably going to match my glasses.
Yeah, you're big on snazzy glasses, aren't you? Every photo I've ever seen of you, you seem to have some snazzy glasses on.
I was that kid in elementary school with the big old glasses that were really made out of glass, and they were too heavy, and
like the Coke bottle dorky ones.
Yeah, kind of dorky. I hope all those pictures have been destroyed.
Well, I haven't seen any of them, so I'm just getting it from what you're describing now. I haven't found those on the interweb, but
I think now that you can accessorize in more ways than one with glasses is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm having to get into glasses now. It's a new thing in my life.
Oh, hey, anytime you want to go glasses shopping, that would be a delight.
Yeah. About a year ago, I couldn't read I stopped being able to read vitamin bottles.
You do this.
Yeah, and so I have to accommodate myself with readers now.
But you don't have them on.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't need them that much, but it's just real small and in shitty light. Yeah,
I get that. Yeah, it's starting. It's they definitely help me see, and over the years, I feel like they're also, it's the you could do this and those pregnant pauses, right? And look.
Yeah, for dramatic effect.
Yeah, that dramatic effect thing.
And they do make you look smart, and yours make you look like make you sort of look like what you are, I guess. A creative movie type, right? You look like a movie producer or somebody. Fabulous.
These were definitely the superhero. Like, I saw somebody else was wearing them and they put them down, and I took a look at them and go, oh my God, those are some glasses. Do you mind if I try them on? Didn't think I would rock it. Put them on. I was like, whoa, Okay, now I feel like a superhero. I could actually stand differently.
These glasses make me stand differently.
They make me stand differently and look different. These are actually my my good luck charm for TED.
Are those the glasses you wore for your TED Talk?
They are the glasses I wore for my TED
Oh, maybe that's why they look so familiar to me.
Talk.
What was
Well,
it like for you to do a TED Talk?
oh my God, it was probably one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life. You know, a total honor. Extremely, I was, you know, I prepared, and I was, you know, the team behind TED is just so amazing and so professional, and they've got all the formulas figured out. They've got the process figured out. You know, I had an amazing coach who was a great who's a great speaker and has spoken many times, and is both thoughtful and a performer. But I tell you, you know, like trying to find out and figuring out what your real story is and honing in on that. And they don't tell you what to say. It really is coming from the speaker, but a lot of it is, you know, questioning. And since I got to do this together with on the TED at IBM stage, it was part of their partnership. I had like the best of the IBM people and the best of the TED people all asking me like and telling me and just saying, why are you going to talk about racism of all things? And, you know, if you're going to talk about racism, what does that really have to do with you? And just probing and probing and probing. So it made me dig. And I ultimately dug out a story. And there's so many, but I dug out a story that I never, ever talked about, ever. And it was really frightening to, you know, talk about it on a big stage that I knew was ultimately going to be recorded. Um, so that was frightening. It took a little
And what
bit
made you
to get
tell
there.
that story? I mean, I've heard your talk. I think it's really important. And why that story, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think you know why I love your show too is this idea of, you know, what shapes us and what shapes us from these everyday experiences. And, you know, as a New Yorker, sure, I'm sure if you ask how many New Yorkers got mugged, plenty of New Yorkers got mugged. But it was one of those formative experiences, right, that I never ever talked
How
about.
old were you? Remind me.
I was 7 years old, and basically, my mom and I were mugged at knife point. I had a knife around my throat by the person who grabbed me, and it was one of those things where it's like I could tell you the movie scene, you know, where we're coming back. It's a Sunday afternoon, and I'm pretty sure we went to church and we went to go buy
And you
groceries.
grew up on Park Avenue. That's right, didn't
I
you?
did. I
Yeah.
grew up on Park Avenue, aka, you know, where the mob was and the
Yeah.
melting pot, and it was drug alley. My first career was the glamorous sweatshops, and I just remember us coming home with the groceries, and we lived in what I called like just it was all steel. It felt like a prison. You know, so you walk up these little stairs, and then you have these two elevators. They're made of steel. It's aluminum. There's this tiny little window that you could see somebody. You walk in and it smells like ammonia. There's graffiti, but then you know you have the cleaner to try to clean the graffiti. So it's just this the cell,
Yeah.
you know, that you
It's a
walk into.
cornucopia of sights and sounds and
It really
smells, right?
it really is. So
It's life.
it really is, and it's just life. And you know, the elevator doors are about to close, and then all of a sudden, you know, the arm comes in and it stops the elevator, and these
And it
two
makes
kids
that
walk
noise, right? That
in. Yeah, no, it kind of does the gung gung, right?
yeah.
Because the rubber meets it, and then it's like gung gung. And these two kids come in, and you don't even think anything of it. And of course, the numbers, right? It's like you see the number, and we lived in apartment 11G, and they punched a number below, and of course, you don't even think about it, but they punched a lower number. And I just remember, I mean, it's all a blur, but I do remember the next thing I know, the door to their floor opens up, and it's just us. And just as it opens, it looks like they're getting out, but then they don't. And basically, um, you know, one grabs me and there's a knife around my neck, and the other, you know, holds the door. kind of with one foot, but then starts, shoving his knife up toward my mom's throat. And, I'm little, it's 7. And I remember my mom dropping the bags. There's something rolling out of the bag kind of thing. And of course, they demanded all our money. And my mom, I think it's the experience. I didn't talk about this at the TED Talk, but it happened so fast and it was so frightening. And I remember shaking. And even at this moment, as I'm thinking about it, there's like the sweaty palms start happening. And so it's that visceral experience, right, that you kind of don't get out of your mind, but I've definitely blocked it out in my mind. And I just remember somehow we got back into the apartment, and you would think that my mom would be so pissed off, or, this is hard earned money. I remember working in the sweatshops with her, but she got back up there. She didn't cry. She was stoic, and she basically did, I think, I've been trying to reconcile it, forever, which is, they probably needed the money more. Like, let's pray for them, because she came from a very Christian background. She wasn't angry. She wasn't distraught. I mean, it kind of shocked me. I think at that moment when she was thinking beyond herself, and even, I don't know, and I never had this chance to talk to her about it, unfortunately, and whether.
You said that in your TED Talk that you had never, not only had you never shared this with anyone, you hadn't spoken about it with your mother. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it briefly at that moment, I remember, and just, I think there was a part of me that didn't realize how her reaction was strange until I was older and thinking about it,
And why do you
because
think you never spoke with her about it after that, even as an adult?
we just don't talk about those things. We just never talked about these hardships. And when I did, um, I just felt like my mom she was always able to see something positive out of it, even something as horrific as that.
Hmm.
And and then I think with this, because the thread that really comes through and over the years is really around racism, because at the end of the day, there were so many conversations or things that I would pick up where, if it's a Black and Chinese issue, which often is not talked about in the media or press, or something comes up.
What is, I hate to interrupt you, Billy, but what is a Black and Chinese issue? What is that?
Within every race, there's so much racism. So even in the Chinese race, I heard more about racism within my own race. Like, if you're from northern China, just like in America,
Right.
there's a difference between the North and the South, from the East and the West. And as you know, there hundreds of provinces and languages
Listen, I live in
within
a little
China.
town of 60,000 people, and the West Side and the East Side is constantly giving each other the
Right,
finger for no
right.
fucking reason. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? It's awesome here. Whatever. They're over there. We're over here. What are you talking about? But like all
Exactly.
this crazy tribalism it's got to be something that's deeply rooted in our monkey brain.
It totally is. And it's so deep, and it definitely has to do with color, even in the Chinese spectrum. I'm the girl.
So different colors of Chinese people don't like other colors of
uh,
Chinese people?
Definitely. And even my mom, so I have freckles. My mom has freckles. She's the black sheep of the family. She was darker skin than everybody else in her family. She was 7 of 10. So when I was born, and the first little freckles started showing up, she would tell me these stories of the mole. She was like trying to remove my mole, any black spots. I even remember growing up,
How
and
is she trying to remove your mole, Billy?
she would do this. She would try to flick it, and then she would tell the nurse, and it's like, "Is this something you could get rid of?" And they're like, "No, no, no, it's a beauty mark. You should keep it." Thank goodness my mom kept
Yeah,
it.
you look like I don't know, Cindy Crawford or so. It is a beauty mark. It's
People,
great. You
people,
look great.
people pay money to make that happen.
Yeah, no, really, right? They remember they used to draw the dot on them, right?
Yeah,
With
it's
with
not
the
true.
eyeliner or whatever
Exactly.
pen, right? Women
Exactly.
did that, right? They
Yeah.
did that, right? They draw the
No.
dot on the side, right where
Exactly.
yours is. You're
Yeah.
like perfectly. Hey, the guys in makeup did a great job putting on
Thank
that fake
you.
beauty
I
mark.
paid I paid a lot of money here in New York for that, but I do get
Yeah.
it out.
But your mom was trying to flick it off your
She
face?
was trying to flick it off my face, and the freckles which she has, she's like, "Aya, you so ugly, you so ugly." She constantly called me ugly. She constantly called me dark.
What? Your mother called you ugly?
Yeah.
Hey,
She had
listen.
poems about me being ugly because I had freckles on my face.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know how much shit has changed. I get into trouble for calling little girls in my life, little ones, like
Yeah.
10 and below, pretty or beautiful. They're like, oh, don't tell her she's beautiful. Tell her she's smart. I'm like, okay, got it. Oh, you're so smart and beautiful, right? But like, anyway, my point is, it's weird to think that you get in trouble for calling girls beautiful, and your mom called you the opposite of that.
Oh my God, she had poetry around it. It's like my nose was too flat, my face was too wide, I was too dark. When she discovered, those ads that come up, and she discovered there was a cream to actually make you whiter, she got it. Like, and it wasn't cheap. And you're like, okay, really, Xiao Yi, she calls me little, the Chinese word is like little E, that's part of my name. Xiao
Little
Yi, she's like,
E,
my Chinese name is Wang Junyi, actually, and it's a really fabulous name. My mom really paid attention to names, and part of it is like a beauty, but it's not beauty. It's like this classic beauty. I don't even know how to explain it. And the second word has to do with wisdom. So she wants me to be beautiful and wise,
and
but
wise.
on the other side of it, it's like, here, take this cream, put it on your
Put it on
face.
your ugly face. Maybe it'll fix your face.
Put it on your ugly face and get white.
Why get white? Why
Because
is getting white cool?
because going back to the racism, right? Even in her culture, she was dark. She was the black sheep, and she felt
And why was being dark in her culture the bad thing?
it was the same thing. Being dark means that you're from a different class, right? It goes back to like working in the fields, or and it's not so much the office, but I think there was just a real sense of it matters, just like you were saying, the tribalism, right? If you're from the north, she came more from closer to the capital in the north in Tianjin, and there was this whole thing about the north versus the south and being darker and whiter. It's just, I don't know, where does this stuff come from, Christopher? And it's in
Yeah,
every single culture.
no, it's I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and the English and the French were furious at each other for a war that happened, over 100 years ago, and yeah, I mean, we grew up fighting. I mean, as
Yeah,
kids, English and French.
exactly.
It was terrible. It was a horrible environment to grow up in because it was
Yeah,
very destabilizing for the community. And as a kid, it's destabilizing, right? What do you want as a child? You want a stable family unit, right? And you want a stable community environment to be in. And, unfortunately, in my case, I didn't get either. uh,
and look how great you turned out.
yeah, I did turn out okay. And, the good news in spite of that was, I had parents that loved me. So I,
Yes.
I think, I think your parents can, um, if a child knows her parents or his parents love them, that makes up for a lot somehow in the end.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think, part of the definition for me was to like always think about, so what does love mean? And to the extent I especially as I got older and I was trying to understand why my mom would go so far as to like even try to change my physical appearance.
Yeah,
um you know from not it wasn't just about the cream, it was like my nose was too flat, my legs were too short. I mean,
there was a list, there
there
was a
was
spreadsheet.
there was a list. Oh my God, it would totally be a spreadsheet, and like
Wow.
week by
And so
week.
what does that do to you how old are you when she's writing poetry about your shitty nose and everything?
Oh, I was a baby, and she wrote the poetry, and she told me as I was growing up, and she repeat the poem. And of course, it's done in love, right? It is. It's
Was
going
she
back to what you
poking
said.
fun, or I mean, what was?
Yeah, it was like the poem was something like "别鼻子大嘴宽脑门", right? It's like flat nose, 别鼻子大嘴. My mouth was too big, 别鼻子大嘴宽脑门. Big flat forehead. The width of my face, the length of my face was smaller than the width of my face, and she ended tosala, which means you're ugly to death. Or
And this
as
is when you were first born?
this was when I was first born, and maybe it would be more like you're, in New Yorker language, it'd be you're ugly as shit, right? So it's like you're ugly to death. We don't say shit in Chinese,
Okay.
but it's that idea, right? Ni tosala. So tosala is like you're ugly to death, is what she would constantly say to me.
And this was a narrative that she came back to, obviously, throughout your childhood.
Throughout my
Did she
childhood,
ever stop doing this stuff, saying this stuff to you?
no, and I think it got funny. Like I realized it was something that was in jest, but then here's the other side of it, right? I remember one of the other crazy things she did was like put me in a beauty pageant. I was this little girl. There was some beauty pageant. It was like whatever. I don't even know. But I remember somehow we never go to Jersey, but one of my few memories of going to Jersey was for this beauty pageant. It was super hot. It was like one of those hot New York muggy days. And we were standing on these tiers, right? And I was standing there, and I remember it was so hot. We were standing in the sun, which, by the way, isn't good for you because it makes you dark. Um, and this girl, I was a girl, and this girl right in front of me passes out. I think just from heat exhaustion and nervousness or whatever. And she passes out, like just drops in front of me. And I don't even know, I can't remember anything else. I don't think I got very far, probably disappointing my mom even more that I didn't make it into the next round, you know? So there was this thing that definitely I grew up with, where I just felt like the expectation that she had for me, um, and I think rolling this forward into future life, it's like it did come from love. It did come from this desire of wanting really the best for me, wanting me to succeed in all ways. And the real perception and truth that, in her mind, because she was seen as the black sheep and the ugly one in her family, I don't think she ever felt that she was successful. To her, she was always a loser, and she didn't want her daughter to be a loser. And she picked those characteristics that
But
she could
so
only
what? But why
have
did she jam this negativity? I mean, and the thing is, of course, and take this the way I mean it. You're an absolutely beautiful woman, right? And you had to have been a beautiful child.
I
And,
don't
and
know.
well, of
But thank you.
course. Well, of course. And see, the thing I wonder about, particularly with beautiful little girls and young women as they're growing up, is the world tells them from a very early age they're beautiful, and so what does that do to them? And that's why my sister doesn't want me to say to her kids they're pretty. But and so I guess my question is, if your mom is saying this stuff to you, the world is telling you you're a beautiful little girl because you had to have been a beautiful little girl.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what I got. I
So
think
you didn't get the other side.
no. And the fact that we were picked on, or we weren't portrayed on TV. There was nobody that
What do
looked
you
like
mean you were
me.
picked on?
Bullied at school, definitely being the little Chinese kid, all the languages, being picked on by any race, whether it was, a fellow Puerto Rican or a black person or a white person. I was always the chink. I had Chinese people picking on me, right? Actually, one of the first things I remember was a Cantonese speaking kid telling me that I wasn't Chinese because I spoke Mandarin. So I
How
don't.
many Chinese people speak Mandarin in the world?
Well, and
And
if you
so,
if you
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no,
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, if you think about it, it's like, certainly the world has gotten more global, and I do think, when I think back on times like those, and especially not being portrayed positively in media, right? There were hardly any other Chinese women. If they were beautiful, they were whores, they were prostitutes, right? And if you
But
have
didn't they have nice words for them? The Japanese ones were called geishas, right?
right,
Sounds
geishas, the
that
beautiful
sounds way
makeup.
more erudite than
Right.
hooker.
And what color were the geishas? Pure white, right? It's like you think about their faces and that stereotype.
Oh yeah,
They were
I guess
all
I didn't
light
think about that.
skinned.
Huh.
right? And then anybody like, and then you get into the kung fu fighters, right? It's like, oh, my brother must be Bruce Lee. So
It's funny right now. Facebook is trying to sell me a T-shirt that's, where the ad section is on Facebook. There's some T-shirt company trying to sell me a T-shirt that
yeah.
says on it, "Surely not everyone was kung fu fighting."
Oh no.
So your brother was Bruce Lee, I guess, then.
My brother was Bruce Lee. Of course, he decides to practice karate, right? So I feel like, there weren't that many positive signals for me. It certainly didn't come from family. And again, with
Is that why
all
you're such an overachiever? I mean, your educational background is insane. I mean, you have stacked degrees on top of degrees from ding dong university after ding dong university, right? I mean, and I don't mean this in a shitty way, but I look at your education, I go, wow, that was somebody who was A, up to something, and B, might have been proving something. I don't know. There's a lot of fuck you, I got educated seems to be going on in your life.
No, it was more, damn, am I a lucky person? I got educated kind of life. It
That's how it
wasn't,
felt.
yeah,
So I'm
no.
I'm imposing my punk rock ethos on your background in a horrible way. Is that what I'm doing?
Well, I mean, think of it, right? My mom immigrated to this country. My brother was only 6 years old when he came from Taiwan. My mom escaped the communists. She grew up in Japanese occupied China. Education was important to her, but because she was a woman, she was never expected to be educated. She actually had to put herself through school and learn to read. And she told me stories about,
How old was she when she learned to read?
she was a young woman, in Japanese occupied China, learning Japanese. And, my mom is really the role model in spite of all the crazy that she did to me, because someplace in there, I saw the fighter in her. And even though she had her ways of putting me down, I think putting me down was also a way to tell me that she loved me. And we had that reconciliation, when she died and after I started BAYCAT, and she questioned every single thing that I did. And I think that's partly because she grew up in such hardship and had to teach herself. And her grandfather, my grandfather, her father would say to her, it's too bad you're a woman. You are such a great businesswoman. Cushy. It's like, it's sad. It's a shame that you're a woman, because you could do so much more as a man. And if that's what
Wow.
she grew
That was
up
her
with,
dad.
that was her dad, my grandfather, who I never
Yeah,
met.
what a bummer you're a woman.
What a bummer you're a woman. It's like,
Wow.
it's such a shame. It's such a strong word, to use in Chinese. It's like, it's a shame that you're a
Shame is a
woman.
big word.
Shame is a big word. So if my mom grew up that way, I don't know. I feel like on the one hand, she had expectations for me, but she wasn't like what is the modern day like crazy tiger mom, which I have plenty of friends, relatives who are like proud to be tiger mom. The kids take
Are you
five.
not a tiger mom, Billy?
I don't have my own kids. I am a bit of a tiger mom to all the BAYCAT kids, but the soccer classes, the kung fu classes, the billions of languages, right? My mom didn't really have that quite. I mean, partly because she wasn't of this culture. So she didn't know anything about Ivy League schools. She didn't go to school here. She didn't have that kind of access or knowledge. So she wasn't like, you've got to go to Harvard, but definitely the next generation of the family that I see started thinking that way.
Yeah.
So I seriously am like, I feel like the luckiest person on the planet that A, I'm alive, and B, I was able to stumble into the right schools. And I feel like it is, whether you call it stumbling or whether you call it like whatever, like if you believe in like the fate and the stars aligning in just the
The
right way.
universe putting you where it needs to put you.
Yeah, I really feel that way. I feel so lucky that the right things happened and I made the right choices, to get to today. But
And when did you decide? I mean, and if this is not the way you think of it, then by all means tell me, of course, how you think of it. But you seem like somebody, Billy, to me, who's made racism a central thing in your life that you want to get after, that you want to make a difference with. And so, when did you decide that that's what you wanted to go do? You want to make a difference around racism?
Yeah, I think it really has been something that the TED Talk helped me to crystallize and say out loud. So I do think that's been something that has been in my heart and just not knowing what to do about it. So as
Well,
I,
and you tell me if I took the wrong interpretation. You not only tell that story, which was the first time you've told that story, you also admit to its impact on your own feelings of racism over time, right?
of course,
And that to me is what makes the talk, because you admit that. And look, anybody who's human who doesn't admit that is lying to themselves, right?
absolutely.
There's something about different looking people that fires our monkey brain, or I should say, can fire our monkey brain,
Yeah,
right? And there's
yeah,
lots of theories as to why, but it comes from some primordial place, and it's when we educate ourselves, right?
yeah,
Or it's when
absolutely.
we sort of, the other sort of interesting thing about it, of course, is you don't see it in children,
Right.
right? You put five-year-olds together of different nationalities, and what happens is they play together.
Yeah. Yeah, but I like I told you, the first, like, that Chinese kid who told me I wasn't Chinese, that was in second grade. So it was beyond the year of the age of 5.
But
But
somebody, my point is, somebody taught that kid that. That
somebody
kid
taught
did.
that kid
That kid
that.
didn't make that up.
Right, right. But here's the other side. I think in this, especially now, this big talk, everything is around race. There's this hypersensitivity around race. And I think for me, um, at the end, when you feel this constant barrage of you don't fit in, you don't fit in, you don't fit in, there's the other side of it, of, well, do you hole yourself up and try to look for people with the similarities? And at the end, I really feel like everybody just wants to belong, right? Everybody wants to fit in. Everybody wants a sense of belonging. So what does that mean? And the stereotypes and the communities that build up. Anytime that somebody looks at me and I say I'm from New York, the next question is like, oh, did you grow up in Chinatown? And it's like, okay, I grew up outside of Chinatown. I didn't grow up in Chinatown, but the community that I had was partly all Chinese because they were Chinese immigrants, and growing up in the sweatshop, they were all Chinese, Cantonese speaking. But the other side was Jewish, Puerto Rican, Black. I mean, it was truly the melting pot in the projects. And as I grew up in New York and like got older and ended up on Wall Street and all these great things, I got further away from the melting pot. Wall Street was
That's
not that,
interesting. That's an
right?
interesting observation, because I grew up the same way, although it wasn't in the projects, but um, because of my incredible academic skill, not so much. I ended up in special needs schools. Is kind of how we'd probably describe them today. Uh, and as a result, every kid who was
I think
on
I
the
just
island.
lost you. Sorry.
Billy, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I
Yeah,
lost you for a second.
that's okay. Sometimes Putin interrupts. Um, but anyway, my point is, I grew up on the island of misfit toys with all the other misfits. And so there were the Jewish misfits and the Italian misfits and the Chinese misfits and the black misfits and the Indian misfits, and you name it. And they were around. And so, I don't know, I just grew up, in an environment much like yours. And it is an interesting observation, in the business world, certainly in the tech world. Um, yeah, it got less diverse. I had never thought about it in quite the way you just described it, but that's exactly what happened in my life too.
Yeah. And so when you think about it, it's almost like everything else that I witnessed that is coming from the outside in, and that's especially media, right? Back then and even now, even though you see more colors and different identities showing up on media, part of it is it just doesn't feel authentic, right? Because these are stories that, like, I think perpetuate stereotypes. Or when I think about there's nobody that looks like me, there was nobody that looked like my family. And to the extent we are the misfits, I definitely felt like that. It was always said, you're bad, right? I grew up with the Brady Bunch, and that was the perfect family, 3 boys, 3 girls. And someplace in there, it was okay to be like remarried. and to find, like, I don't know, did they get divorced? What happened there exactly?
What
That
did
was
happen
never
on the
talked
Brady
about.
Bunch?
I don't know.
And I don't
Did
know, was
they
the
die?
dad diddling the maid, or like there was stuff going on?
Alice? No, 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 no.
No, maybe not
No, I
Alice.
don't think Alice. But, you know, my dad
Maybe
was
mom was doing the pool guy.
well, the kids, right?
Actually, I did the actress and the actor who played the mom, didn't they get into it or something? I don't know. Isn't there some crazy backstory with they all
Hello,
got
hello.
tangled up with each other and stuff?
Yeah, sorry, Christopher. My internet is deciding to spew out here. Um,
Uh, and
no,
I don't
no.
know
What did
what
you?
happened behind the scenes at the Brady Bunch. That's
Oh,
what they were
yeah.
talking about, important topics like that.
Exactly. Isn't that important? So I remember like studying that, right? And going, okay, there must be something wrong with my family, right? First of all, my dad hardly ever comes home. If he does, he never kisses my mom on the cheek, right? Okay, go stereotype. Chinese people don't kiss. Like,
I didn't know that stereotype. Chinese people don't kiss.
well, that's what I thought. That was a stereotype I started making up because I never saw my mom and dad
Oh,
kiss.
well, I
I'm
have
like,
Chinese friends and they kiss me.
oh, I would kiss you if I saw you.
Oh, I would love that. That would be wonderful. Not in any weird, inappropriate
No,
way.
no,
I mean, for
no,
the love
no,
of
no,
God.
no. Just
You know,
um,
isn't that the funny thing, though? There's a funny, weird blowback to some of this stuff, right? Which is we get into this place where, like, what do we even do with each other? The last time, I don't know. Dushka's been on Legends and Losers more than anyone
yeah,
else. And on one of them anyway, her and I got into a conversation about when men and women greet each other, like what do
yeah,
we do,
yes,
right? And it's like, well, if you take sort of the letter of the law, so to speak, like we're not even supposed to shake hands, or I don't know, maybe we fist bump, I don't know, right? Um,
yeah,
anyway,
and yes, exactly. And now I'm with the Italian, so it's like, is it the left cheek first or the right cheek first? I
yeah.
think both
What
cheeks,
does he
right?
kiss you like 15 times on each cheek or something? Well, I
No,
guess it
I
has to
think
be
it's
an even number. So
just.
16 times, eight on each side. Is that how it goes?
I think it's only two.
No, and my wife Carrie is Italian, and of course, therefore, comes from an Italian family.
Yes,
And man, are we ever huggy and kissy? But you know,
yes,
and so yeah,
and
and
man
human
to
beings
man.
need to be touched, right?
Totally. And man to man, right? It's like I love that the men kiss each other to greet each other and it's like no big deal, right? And just like, you know, going back to that messaging and that sense of belonging, it's like when nothing resonates with you, then it's like, okay, you're trying to figure out how to belong. And I think, you know, going back to like your visceral senses. So do you belong better with people who look like you or act like you or come from the same education, or do you belong with those that don't? And I actually felt more comfortable at the end. I feel like being back into this like diverse population, um, because that's what I grew up with, and in some way it just felt safer. But here's the crazy, right? I had to get there because certainly getting mugged by two young Black people put me in a position where I was scared of them. I
And you
was
in your TED
totally
talk,
scared.
Lily, in your Billy, in your TED talk, you talk about how there's I forget what the word was, but there's a horrible word in Chinese for Black people, a derogatory word.
Well, it's you know, it literally is the vocabulary. It's "Hey Ren," right? Ren means people, and Hey is Black. So if I describe Black people as we would say in English, you say Hey Ren. But
And
um,
that's not a pejorative term.
it's not a pejorative until, and we do this, right? So anybody who is a monster or a gui or a devil, right? You could add the word gui, right? So often I've heard people talk about Black people in Chinese as "Hey gui" as opposed to "Hey ren," and that means you're the Black devil. So I could call you, you know, Bai gui, right? You could be a white devil, you could be any devil. You could add the word
Are
devil
you
to
being racist against the white follically challenge? Is that what's going on here, Billy?
it. No, I would totally do this with your husband, right?
Oh,
Oh,
I would love it
is
if you
that a
rubbed my
bad
head.
thing?
No, look, you know, see, this is the thing. Like, let's just it's okay, right? Look, I get there's creepy shit that people do. Most of coursely, yeah, of coursely guys, but like,
Yes.
there's a lot of us who are not creeps too, right?
Yes. No, exactly. And I think, it's gotten harder and harder as we've like progressed. And I think part of the reason why this is important to talk about is because we all have these crazy ass perceptions, and mainstream media also makes it like, what the heck is this political correctness? What does that mean? How does that translate to being human? And if
Well,
it's
it
like,
ends up in this in a bunch of bullshit speak.
it does.
Look, so on one hand, of course, are there some transformations in our language that make a difference? Of course, and hopefully not too much of an idiot about that, right? When you call somebody a wino, it's very different than when you call them a homeless person, and language creates a demarcation point in language, creates a demarcation point in thinking, which ultimately creates a demarcation in actions and behavior. So there's some of those things that make sense, right? But then some of them, it's just ridiculous, right? We've just gone so fucking far, and to the point where we now have, I believe we're in a new age of authenticity, because we've been drowning in
Yep.
so much fucking inauthenticity for so long.
Yep.
There's a bunch of people who say, look, I'm just not going to participate with you, whether it's media and entertainment content, or whether it's a company, or whether it's a nonprofit like yours, or an
Yep.
individual. If you're
Yep.
going to be an inauthentic asshole, then go fuck yourself. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that anymore.
No, absolutely. I love that. It definitely is about authenticity, but I think, the challenge is also it's the ADHD, right? Our attention span, right? There's plenty of studies that say, our attention span as human beings is smaller than a goldfish. And to the extent we're barraged by headlines, which how can you be authentic, right? In a few words, we see many variations on that theme. And to the extent we then jump to a judgment right away from like looking at a headline or whatever that is. And what starts missing is the dialogue, is exactly this, which is, let's have these conversations. At some level, I want to understand what this word means to you,
Right.
and why it's important to you or why it's not important to you, right? Or how it offends you.
And
um,
so, Billy, what's the opposite of racism? So if racism is the machine that you're raging against, so to speak, and this human thrownness to you know be concerned about somebody who looks different or acts different or sounds different. Um, if that's what you're against, then what is the absence of racism? How would you describe the absence of racism? What words would you use?
wow. That's a beautiful thing. Well, the current term is equity, but I think that's just something. It's I'm looking at this glass of water and it's just making me think of like clarity and fluidness. There's something about like us being clear with each other, right? Um, and honest. I think in human terms it's that, and ultimately, but to find some type of commonality and belonging, and the equity word is an important one because I think there's been so much damage done that that's more outcome driven, right? That we could be more equal. But I think deep down it's about connecting and belonging and being clear and honest.
So
That's a
those
great
words,
question.
thank you. Those words are very interesting to me, because that's, I don't know what I expected, but those are very interesting words, Billy. And what I do know is, and look, I have about as much expertise on this as I do underwater, bathroom repair. But uh, words to me like inclusion and tolerance, I I think those are fucked up words in this regard. Because when I hear people talk about, well, society needs to be more tolerant, or companies need to be more inclusive, or like, what? I don't know. It's to me, that's a fucked up context. Um, and the other one that I didn't hear that I'm very interested in, and I don't know if it's the right word or not. What do I know? I didn't go to college, but is the word meritocracy. Because for me, I have a fair cornucopia of friends, um, And what the thread that connects them, I didn't say, okay, well, I got to have an Indian friend, and then, our friend Dushka, I got to have a Mexican female friend. And, sooner or later you're like, what are you doing? You're like shopping for like a lesbian and a wheelchair friend, or like, it's ridiculous. Right. So,
Yeah.
so like, I certainly never thought about that. What I did think about is for lack of a better phrase, and excuse me for sounding like I've lived on the West Coast for too long, but a tribe that shares an ethos.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing for me too, I was just talking to a friend about this. They kind of have to be the whole package for me, right? Like, so I'm interested in legendary people, and so people who kind of score high across legendary everywhere in life, because those are the people who I find are interesting, right? And so it turns out that I've been lucky in my life that ends up being a real cornucopia of people and persuasions, or whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, but you're seeking it out, right? And
yeah, but what I'm not seeking, what I'm seeking are people who do amazing things in life. And, some of them happen to be Indian or Chinese or Black, or some of them happen to be female, and some of them happen to be in love with the same sex, and, and whatever. Right. But I guess my point is, I don't like them for that reason.
Right.
Like, I've worked with a lot of women in business, worked with and for. And I don't seek out women in business. I seek out people who fucking crush it.
Yeah.
Right. And if some of them are women, that's great. But the women in business that I worked with, I didn't work with them because of some, inclusion goal the company set. So I was meeting my fucking quota.
No, totally. And I think intention is a big one, but I do feel, there's not enough Christophers in the world who might really see the merit of that, right? I do think like the outcomes, that it is important to outcomes, because going back to like that natural sense of belonging or feeling what might resonate, folks might not seek that out. You're seeking it out with a certain intention, right? But I feel like when you say it happens to be that these people are women, it happens to be they might be.
Well, and I got a lot of white guys in my life too, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's not.
No, totally. But I think when there is a barrage that tends to be of a certain whatever dominance, and the white males now are all worried, and look at what's happening with the politics of it all, that there's this fear, oh my God, are we going to get left out? Well, what do you think it's felt like when we have been missing this whole time? So that fear aspect we all share. And if at some level,
but see, those white old guys who feel that way, I say fuck you, because what that is, what that is, let's talk about what that is. What that is a fear of being able to compete.
Yes.
So if you go back to meritocracy, and look, I don't wake up and have any political label I put on myself. I'm not affiliated with a party. I don't consider myself to be, left, right, or in between. So I don't, I try to think about things. That said, if you sort of take a very libertarian perspective in the context of meritocracy, this is the part I don't understand. This is the part I don't understand, which is you say, hey, listen, I want the best person for the job, because what I care about is legendary results. And if the best person for the job happens to be, a Chinese woman, well, fucking A, right? Like, I don't care. What I care about are legendary results.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if you're a Chinese woman and you don't produce legendary results, I'm going to fire your ass. I don't. And the fact that you're a Chinese woman, hey, that's really nice and everything, but like, we're trying to dominate a category here, right?
Totally.
We're up to something.
Totally.
And so what I don't understand about this, particularly in a business context, is if you took a pure capitalist, pure libertarian point of view, then it would by definition have to be a meritocracy. And of course, that's not what happens. I'm not an idiot. I know that's not what happens.
Right.
But that's sort of where I land on this topic. And the interesting thing is, having landed there, Billy, interestingly enough, I have a magical box of chocolates in my life of people.
No, and again, I feel like you have to think about the ecosystem, right, that you've created and comes and that comes to the forefront. I mean, look at how we got to meet, and it's through friends of friends, and you have a certain
How
network,
funny, right?
right? And what talk about small world? I always love your small world scenario type of ideas, right? But think about it. Going back to that in the workplace, um, yeah, everybody's like, okay, we get it. We've got to include and all that. But I'm looking for the best person. And it's not an either or. And I think we've got to go beyond that question. It really is about how do we get there? What is the ecosystem behind the scenes? Because, as an Asian woman being on Wall Street and being a lawyer, I could tell you I never fit in. And if it wasn't for the fact that I ended up at the right schools, right, Christopher? I mean, you were just saying, I ended up at the right schools, and therefore those doors opened. The kids that we work with every day, right, they have no fucking idea what these schools are, no freaking idea. And to the extent their parents were like my parents, my mom, I think the gap has even widened, because if you're not growing up with what we're talking through right now, this technology, and if you don't know how to search, and if you can't do it, if you don't have technology in front of you, you're already behind. Yeah, and that's what's happening. It's like the gap that has been created with technology and creating this ecosystem that gets us to the front line can either be inclusive or it could be continuously divisive. And so
So
we want
maybe
to do
let's
something to
see if we
bridge that.
can underscore some of this, Billy, because in doing homework about you in preparation for our dialogue today, I saw this as a theme you returned to, and so when I saw some of the numbers you were pulling and so forth, and I, like an idiot, sort of unconsciously assumed in America today, for the most part, there wasn't much of a digital divide, and uh, you so gently and wonderfully whacked me in the head and said, "Hey, idiot, there's a giant digital divide,"
It
and
really
so
is.
there really is, even in the United States.
Not only in the United States, but in
Well,
the most innovative city, right, of technology in Silicon Valley. And
so
in the
what's
Bay
going
Area.
on?
So, like now we're definitely seeing the cost of these guys go down. Our kids are starting to show up with smartphones. But when you think about, like, we have this great internship program, and 3 out of our 10 young people with 2 weeks to go dropped out because of housing issues, right? Because of
And
just,
what's a quote? Housing issue sounds like a nice way of saying something terrible. What's a housing
right.
issue?
Like, how about if you're practically homeless or bouncing from couch to couch or living, in your relatives' places? We have people who, because of the requirements of bringing diversity, and when you look at funding, going back to this giant ecosystem,
Yeah.
if part of it is you've got to live in San Francisco, and that's where the funding comes from, and San Francisco is going to try to bring workforce development to the table. And they've done an amazing job bringing the funding, but then you've got to qualify in all these little ways. Just like low income housing, you've got to qualify. You've got to just make enough or not make enough to qualify for all these things. Our young people who, when I say they're homeless, it's everything from, I know, they've got to make decisions if they're getting a paycheck for that first job, to get their foot in the door, to be that person of color, working in the workforce. They're making decisions about what to eat, how to dress, and transportation with no safety net. And it literally is, am I going to, not be able to take BART, and actually pay for it, or jump on the Muni because I got to make my rent. And if I don't make my rent, then what happens? Because when a lot of even the placements that we're making with our young people, these are temporary jobs,
So
right,
what
that
you're
get
saying
you
is
in the door.
not every preschooler in the United States has an iPad. Is that what you just said?
Absolutely, right? Our kids are not the ones growing up with smartphones necessarily, but they are now, but now, even though they're starting to show up because the parents get that this is part of the development that their kids need to have, they're not coming from families that bank online or like
Right.
naturally search for jobs online. We teach them about LinkedIn and creating their reel so that they can be competitive with everybody else. They've got to show up on the radar. And so that technology divide is just part of it. So even though you have the tool, we've done surveys. So what do you use your smartphone for? And the majority of use is going to be about, Snapchat and social media. And even there, then the stories we hear about are, unfortunately, a lot of the socially negative where they're getting bullied, or people are trying to sell them things. And it's more than what was it your shirt say? What did your kung fu shirt say?
Oh, surely not everybody was kung fu fighting.
Right, surely not everybody. So so what we see constantly, even though now they have the technology tool, and half the technology people say, "See, problem solved," but they're actually being asked to be consumers, not
Yeah,
creators.
not creators.
The majority of our kids, even as we survey them, so most of them, although they have a smartphone, there's no laptop at home. If there is any computer at home, it's often shared by the entire family. And now look at it, all the educational systems, everything is digital, right? You have to do your homework online. You have to get your lesson plans online. If there's a change in schedule, you better find it online. So, I'm sure you've seen stories of kids like doing their homework on a
Yeah.
smartphone because there's no computer at home,
Yeah.
right? Now, take that next step, which is what about who's in control of the media and who are the storytellers, going back to authenticity. And part of my passion of like wanting to bring authentic storytellers to places of power where they're really creators and getting their stories out has to do with this technology divide. Because taking that one step further, not only do they not have laptops, they're not accessing creative software. And whether it's open source or what the pros use, which is what we teach, like all the Adobe Creative Cloud, programs, if we don't expose them to this, or if they don't know that this is part of their toolbox.
If you can't use, I don't know, you tell me, I'm not an expert in this stuff, Final Cut Pro, you can't be in this world that you're in, this digital video, audio world that you're training these kids for, right?
Exactly. And it's Adobe Premiere, right, these days.
It's Adobe Premiere, okay.
Yeah. So, if you're lucky enough to have an iPhone, if you're now, of course, we've got YouTube and iMovie and all these other open source type programs. But, how many times do these kids, even if they're playing with it, understand that they can have a career in it? They're not seeing people who look like them, and there's nobody in their network, going back to their tribe, who can open those doors.
And why do you, and maybe it's obvious, but I really would like to dig into it with you if we could. Why, in your mind, is there such a strong connection, Billy, between racism and the things that contribute to there not being a level playing field? See, because for me, that's what racism's about.
Yep.
See, this whole, the flip side of it, that you need to have an employee base that looks a certain way, and that stuff all seems crazy to me. The affirmative action stuff that sort of tilts hard over the other side. But what makes me crazy is the lack of an equal playing field and the lack of a meritocracy, and that's just fucking bullshit. Because look, I'm a white guy. I want to compete. I'm a fighter. I want to know that I can kick the best asses in the world at what I do, that I am truly legendary, right? It's like if you're a fighter, I got my Muhammad Ali t-shirt on. He didn't want to fight a bunch of bums. He fought George Foreman, and Frazier, and on and on and on, right? The best in the world want to compete. That's why the Olympics, where everybody's so passionate about the Olympics, the best in the world compete. Because if you're a real thoroughbred athlete, you want to compete against the best in the world. And so, that's what I think the core of a true meritocracy is. And the degree to which the system gets rigged is the degree to which it's bullshit. Yep. But even as somebody who the system is probably rigged toward, or maybe not even probably, is absolutely rigged toward, I still want to compete against the best. And, I was a misfit too. But I digress. All that leads to a question. All that does lead to a question, which is, you have made this connection between storytelling, media, and racism. Why?
Well, it definitely, part of the TED Talk and just part of my own story, I was ashamed, and it wasn't just because my mom was making me feel ashamed, it was the world making me feel ashamed. My story wasn't out there. No story like ours was out there. And if they were, it was never something to be proud of. So just inherently right there, you don't have to say a word. You don't have to look at me funny. I already felt weird. I already felt like I didn't belong just because our stories weren't lifted, weren't repeated with, curiosity, with pride. Um, so that in and of itself, it's so, and talk about that barrage, right? The lack of, the omission of story that represents who you are. And yeah, there's empathy. And, if anything, I think going back to the race conversation, it's very black and white now. And I still feel like the middle and anybody who's in between, if you're not dark enough, I was never black enough and I was never white enough. And I'm someplace in the middle. God, yellow? Really? That's not my favorite color. I don't look good in it. Oh, what? Because I'm yellow? What the hell? What the
I
fuck,
look
right?
terrible in yellow, just if you wanted to know. I look better in pink, though.
Oh, you would look great in fuchsia. We got to
Yeah,
work
well,
on that.
and my personal brand colors for decades have been black and that bright pink. Is that fuchsia? That sort of neon,
Yes.
almost disco-y pink.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my
I could
I've
change
always
my
had
glasses
black
for
with
you.
pink accents.
We're going to pick out some fuchsia glasses for you, Christopher.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay. So we got to work on that next. But, and I digress, but the point being, when your story isn't shown, isn't really embraced, and think about it. Like if I go Chinese author, how many can you think of? And everybody thinks of Joy Luck Club, Amy Tan, Maxine Kingston Hong, right? And that's it. The list is very short. And as we see the list of entertainers and media people, importantly, corporate people, right, creators who
And
become
so,
the cornucopia, then there's now an embracing of story, which is directly related to how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive others based on who they are and how they look like.
yes. So I get that. The other part of it, so I get how powerful that can be. And the other part of it in my own experience, Billy, is also, um, like when all the shit was going on in the US with the KKK and Charlottesville and like all this racism that just sort of like this experience I had with it was just like, what is going on here? Like,
Yeah.
what fucking year is it? Like,
Yeah.
why are we even talking about this? Like,
Yeah.
uh, so it's clearly very powerful, and the story part of it and the media part of it has got to be a big part of it, a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that went on for me as all that was playing out was I thought to myself, hey, have you ever met a fucking Jewish person? When they were chanting all that nasty shit about Jews? Like,
Yeah.
really? You ever sat down for a beer or a coffee with somebody Jewish?
Yeah. Yeah.
You ever been to New York? You ever been to fucking Israel? You want to go fall in love with an entire nation of people? Go there.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
so that was the other thing I thought was like, how many of you bastards have a passport?
Yep. No, exactly. And to the extent, I think, that's why I love your show and that we have these conversations because, who decides what gets amplified? And I think this goes back to like ownership. And I think we're at the point, given this power of doing podcasts and doing media and having YouTube channels, for the first time, the technology is at the point where we could amplify the kind of stories we want to hear. A week before Charlottesville, our kids were on the big stage and we premiered the show that they produced. This is a youth produced show. And they were talking about, innovations, right? And their own story. And, you think about innovation, they could have easily just talked about technology, but that what they did talk about were the issues that were important to them. And they had to do with race and they have to do with their, safety, this feeling of not feeling safe. These are 11-year-olds, Christopher, right? And we don't want a world where 11-year-olds are not feeling safe just because of the color of their skin. So then
So
what the
so
hell
so
gets
this is
amplified,
yes,
right?
yes. So
That
so
doesn't
this
get
is exactly
amplified.
where yes, I love this part of the conversation. So um, we don't want a world with that shit in it. There's no question about that, and there's no
No.
question that presenting a much bigger narrative that shines a light in places that don't get shined on very often. Uh, Absolutely, and here's my other response to the 11-year-old who doesn't feel safe. Come with me to the dojo and I'm going to teach you to kick some ass. Right?
Okay.
And so there's an other element to this, which is nobody gives it to us.
Yep.
We got to go out in the world and own it. And the legendary look, I feel as much a misfit. Look, I don't know what it's like to be you, but from the way I hear you speak, my relationship with myself and growing up and all that, different experiences, etc., of course, and land at fuck, I'm a misfit. I got a big chip on my shoulder and I'm going to take it to the world. Right.
Yep.
And so there's an element of, on one hand, we need to shine a light on an important set of topics to open people up. I absolutely do believe that. And kind of fuck you, we're taking it anyway.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
No, totally.
Right?
Totally.
So it's this word victim is such a powerful word, but for me in my life, I'll speak just personally for me. When any time I felt like I might be a victim, I refused to be a victim.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And
And I
so I think there's a fighter. I think there's a go out in the world and earn it. And I will forever be fascinated by this discussion of the one of you and your mother in that elevator, right? That we all have these moments of truth in our lives where things happen to us and we do whatever we do and then we make it mean whatever we mean, and they those moments point us, we make a decision as a result of all that and we go in one direction or another, and those moments make us or break us. And there's some people who say fuck you, and they go for it, and there's other people who get crushed by it. And that decision, those moments and how people behave and then the decisions they make and the life path that they go on after those decisions will forever be a conversation that fascinates me. And so I guess my question to you is, you're somebody for whom you could have ended up very victimized and being very racist, both against people of your own race and people of other races. And yet you made very different decisions as a result of circumstances that could have very much led to a whole set of other conclusions and behaviors and actions. Why is that,
absolutely.
Billy?
Yeah, well, that I think, you talked a lot about, you've got to be invited to that dojo, right? You've got to see that. And for me, my role model to fight and not fly was my mom. Because she proved to me every day by showing up that she was fighting. And although, I don't need to be trained in karate or judo or any of the martial arts, I don't know how to
I
do
thought
any
you were a kung fu expert. Aren't you from China?
Yeah, like Lucy Liu, right? That's me, right? I just want to be her when I grow up, right?
Hey,
Um,
I want to be Lucy Liu when I grow up too, man.
if you're out there, I love your freckles. Can we talk freckles? Now I embrace my freckles.
Did
But
she make freckles okay for Asian gals? Is that one of the things she did?
not, my mom just thought she was kick ass, and
Oh,
then
so
of
your
course
mom's a fan in spite of the fact that she had freckles.
she was a fan, but of course I was too fat, right? Then because you look at her and she's like, oh my
Oh,
God, she's fit, and you just get the other
oh
bad
yeah, you
bad
look
things.
so fat to me,
Right?
Billy.
It's like unbelievable. It's been a world of that. But really, as far as that, the answer of like, you got to have the role model, you've got to have the access. These are two huge things that we're talking about. And that victim thing, I think, it's also just really studying it. People who are studying that, from medically looking at it, and we work with Dr. Nadine Burke in Bayview, and she's a great TED speaker, and they've really studied and unfolded this whole idea of adverse childhood, experiences, these ACEs. And when you could take a test and see how many, and it's everything from like, you know, having parents divorced or having parents incarcerated, having somebody close in your life incarcerated, witnessing a crime. When you think about the layers of things, the shit that happens, you know, to young people or and in those early ages, right? That conversation of, do you fly? Do you just crawl into a hole? Or do you fight? Also comes from like a physiological development of what are those things that allow them to actually fight. You almost have to like train yourself, because trust me, there have been plenty of days where I wanted to dig myself in a hole. There's just no way. Is it worth the fight, you know, to even get up every single day and try to go for this? I have to be honest. My answer, you know, not every day is yes. I've got to get my shit together and dig deep and go, okay. And usually the reason why I keep showing up is because I know it makes a difference. You know, when the kids, I talk about Iman in the video, and I talk about the kids, but you know what I'm really interested in? It's not just about the kids that we serve, and I could name hundreds of them who have become my children. What I'm even more interested in now in this conversation is like, how do we change this ecosystem? Because we're not just serving the kids, we're making San Francisco, the Bay, the world better, because we're all going to benefit from this. It's the corporations, it's the CSR people, it's the government, you know, it's the employers, it's everybody's else's mind that I actually think we've got everybody, if we could get everybody fighting for this kind of justice and for this kind of equality, and to actually care about people's story, that's what's going to make the world better. But of course, as you know, and I'm just as money hungry as you are, the ecosystem is all about money. How do you monetize this, right? And when you go back to amplification of stories, why don't we talk about these 11-year stories? They don't sell. They don't get you to open up things. They don't get you to tweet like a crazy person and retweet things. It's like, you know, the way we're programmed, we want the adversity and we want the conflict and we want these things, and somehow we've created the system to monetize it. But when you look at these amazing other stories and these things that actually can motivate people to fight and not be the victim, where the hell does this end up? Nowhere, right? Oh, it's not juicy enough. You know, it's not the kind of thing that can help me make money. So there's something wrong with this ecosystem. And the more that we could do what we do, which is, how can I actually get like the Golden State Warriors champions? Oh, I know. Is it okay if I call them? You know, my initials are VW, and now I'm a VW, like, you know, Dub Nation, VW.
No, no, no.
Anyway,
Believe me, I get it.
right.
I'm a
So
fan. And that, man, is it ever fun having the Warriors
isn't it
in
fun?
our world today? And
Right.
it's really fun, you know, with the rivalry with Cleveland, and
With Cleveland.
it's great. I think it's you know, it reminds me a lot of you know, so many other great sports rivalries. When I was a kid growing up, I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and so the big sports rivalry for me as a kid was the Montreal Canadiens against the Boston Bruins, and then the Canadian national team against the Russian national team. You know, and
Yeah.
those are fun, exciting things. We love
They
that stuff.
are. They are. And like basketball is really deep. It's one of those sports, like more than baseball, to me, was the most accessible sport growing up in the concrete jungle here. You know,
Mm,
my brother played basketball. We rooted for the Knicks. And so, you know, between the Celtics and the Lakers, and now I get to be in Dub Nation land. But
it's
imagine,
fun,
like,
right?
it's so fun. I mean, you know, pinch me. I get to like I got to meet Rick Welts, and I get to work with the community affairs people, and I get to work with the foundation, the digital
Have
team,
you
the
had Steph
broadcast
come and
team.
do something with you yet?
No, 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 not Steph, but I got to meet Andre.
You
And I love
did.
Steph. Steph,
Yeah.
come, all of y'all come.
Yeah.
So,
You know, the
you
thing
know,
about those guys that is so great, you know, in this world where we can be profoundly disappointed by our heroes, particularly our athletic heroes, in ways that is such a giant bummer, you know. Um, anyway, you think about those guys and the way they conduct themselves
yes,
off the court, and
yes,
They're awesome. They're just, and as a guy my age now, I look at them and I mean, Steph Curry's, I don't know, 28 years old.
I know. Isn't it
Right.
amazing?
And
Like,
I
it's
have
amazing.
nephews and nieces that age and shit. And you just go like, these guys they're so poised.
They're so poised.
Right.
And look what he did with Under Armour and just that whole council, right? So
Mental.
talk about like when you go back to that fight, now you've got these role models that we shine a light on. They're more than basketball players, they're team players. And the fact that BAYCAT and our studio and our academy can have the Warriors as clients. So they've hired us and we've created video to support their Black History Month, to have them as donors. Their foundation gets it and gives back, and this is through other corporate sponsors from PG&E. When you look at the stadium and you look at the number of corporate sponsors, every single one of those corporate sponsors, just like you, right? They sign up to a champion. They want their name up there. But my thing is like, how do we actually do this together, right? So they actually, the Warriors have been a client, a donor, what I call a cloner. I want you to be both, right? A client, donor, ending in OR, but they're also an employer. So as our young graduates are now young creatives.
They've hired some of your folks, right?
That's right. The broadcast team has actually hired them. So look, to me, that's a win-win-win. One-stop shopping, right? It's a championship team. Let's change the ecosystem. We're all talking about amplifying stories that make a difference. We're talking about giving back, both in cash as well as talent, to help build our capacity to keep us sustainable. So we could be here for the next 11-year-old who becomes a 21-year-old needing a job. And they're employing, they're putting their money where their mouth is. So part of like what gets me out of bed and says, okay, this is really the right fight and the fight that I was built to do. It's this kind of thinking. I think we get this mentality, this victim mentality, we're just as much to blame for it. Because when you think about nonprofits and the kids, oh, that's nice, because I got this, right? Oh, that's nice. You're a good kid, right? Go get a real job. No, if these are young creatives, don't feel sorry for them. Hire them, right? Don't feel sorry for us just because we're in a nonprofit or I'm Black or I'm brown or I'm blue or I'm green, right? Hire me. Listen to my side of the story. I've got something to offer. So we've got to stop perpetuating the victim mentality and really think beyond. So I feel like the responsibility is on all fronts. The kids, it's not like we need to empower them. They're already empowered. We just got to give them the access. We got to say, hey, it's okay. This place is yours too. This is your dojo. This is your field. This is your media, right? Your story matters. That's why that's like so integral in our mission. But I feel like actually the harder conversation, because it's about money, is how do we get this to work on the corporate, government, the private sector side? So you know what? You guys can make money by doing the right thing. And here's all these ways, that we figured out how you can engage. Hire us, donate to us, employ us, right? So that's been, to me, like the beginning of the breakthrough, because you can't give me an excuse of why you don't want to participate.
Yeah, I mean, the only excuse that I could think of in a purely business context is you're not competitive, right? If you go back to the meritocracy, if I said, well, the students that you churn out or the films and stories and video productions that you do suck in comparison, or they're too expensive, or so I think.
Well, then I'd say, Christopher, that's bullshit, because we're price competitive.
But that's my point. That's exactly my point, which
our work is excellent.
You're competing at a world standard.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's the thing, I think, for me, that frames the context for this. What you're doing, if I understand it, is you're teaching a set of skills that are world class.
Yep.
And you're therefore churning out world class students who can compete.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so, and to me, what justice is about, because I think it's in some ways more than equality. I think it's what is just, right?
Yes.
Is that there's a level fucking playing field, right? Let me fight the best fighters in the world and let the best man or woman come out of the octagon.
That's right. And we're all responsible for making this field level. We are, and I think,
I couldn't agree with that more, Billy. Of
yeah.
course we are.
And when you see our young people are getting placed and getting jobs at Pixar with the Warriors, with the Giants, broadcasting, they're not selling popcorn. When I talk about a young woman of color getting her dream job at Sephora, they're like, oh, is she selling makeup? It's like, no, fuck no, she's on the broadcast branding team, right? Autodesk, Salesforce, like it's finally happening where, we've got good thinkers in the corporate world who see that this is good business. But going back to intention, right? I hope people enter this. Like some people might need the quota. That's just the world. But hopefully most people.
Yeah, but I don't want to work at that company.
I don't want to work at that company.
So for example, I don't have a college degree. Okay. So best of my knowledge, there's like a whole bunch of Silicon Valley companies that would never even look at me because of it. Right. And I won't name any names, but like there are a lot of companies that there's not like it wouldn't even, my resume wouldn't make it past the bot. Right.
Right.
And you know what I think? Go fuck yourself. I'm the greatest fucking CMO in Silicon Valley history.
Absolutely.
And so if your fucking bot won't hire me, like, and so I guess what I'm saying is if I'm somebody and I am somebody that gets sorted out more than I get sorted in.
Yep.
Then I don't want to work at the company that sorts me out.
I agree.
You guys are mental. You guys are fucking stupid, right? Because I am legendary. And so I guess that's, there's the other side of this, which is the fight matters, right?
Yeah.
And being legendary matters. My friend Anne Miracle, like her father says when she gets her job as the photocopy, grunt in the office, you go in there and you be the greatest photocopy grunt in history, right? You go be legendary at photocopy grunt, right? Or my friend Brent Jones, who made it onto the San Francisco 49ers as the 8th tight end invited to camp, right? Which is essentially, you're not going to make it. Yeah. And his dad says to him, Brent, don't drop a pass. And he doesn't drop a pass for like 3 months, and he makes them put him on the 49ers, and he becomes a 3-time World Series champion, right? There's that fight that says, hey, I am not dropping a pass, and I'm going to make Bill Walsh, in this example, put me on that team.
That's right. And the fight continues, right? And it's right in your corner, Christopher, because what we're also saying is you don't need a college degree. You could be a kid coming from the hood, drop out of college, go work for TJ's, make a decision and make those hard choices about whether I'm going to pay my rent or how I'm going to get to my next job, right? And you're going to be the one of the most amazing cinematographers working for the San Francisco Giants production.
Yes.
That's Iman. He started BAYCAT when
That's
he was
the headset.
13.
That's why I love that. He makes it happen, right?
And it's
he forces them. He's Brent Jones. He doesn't drop the pass.
He's proving that you don't need the 4-year college degree because the system doesn't work that way, and you don't need it. Is it great if you decide to do that and you have the access and opportunity? Sure, if you could do that. But part of what we're seeing, especially in the creative field, it's about who you know. It's about us opening the doors, because if you don't have that person pulling you and opening that door for you and pushing you in or pulling you in or just allowing you in, right? You're not even in the room. We've got to get these young people onto that field, into the room.
And that's another thing I love about what you're doing, Billy, is you get them the real experience while they're learning.
Yeah.
With clients. It's not some bullshit experience. It's a very real, it's exactly the world they're going to be in once they come out, right?
That's right.
And then you graduate them with skills they could go work now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and what's amazing is so one of our clients was Super Bowl 50. We did 50 videos in 50 days, 50 videos in 50 weeks for 50 nonprofits. Let me ask you, Christopher, how many ad agencies have done 50 nonprofit videos within that period of time? And as a matter of fact, in 1 year, we easily served over 100 nonprofits, 125 nonprofits. How many ad agencies do that? We get to do that, and we get to be paid for it, and we're not cheap. we bid for that contract just like everybody else. And I know they saw the excellence of our reel. So you got to look at our studio reel if you
Yep.
have it, right? It's quality stuff. So they said, you know what? You guys, BAYCAT, Billy, you're going to get the gig because not only is your stuff beautiful and your price competitive, but look at here, it's the social mission. At the end of the day, we were able to hire 25, young adult interns that were previously all either unemployed or underemployed, and 100% young people of color and women, right? So it's a win-win-win. How could you not make that happen? So that becomes that model. You could tell good stories. And the other great part of it that we haven't even begun to talk about or measure is that for many of those nonprofits, it was the first professionally made video they ever got. And they were able to raise more money as a result of being affiliated and getting with the Super Bowl and getting that, getting that first video. So I think that there's so many possibilities for us to win in so many ways and to really make a profit and to help to build this ecosystem, right? That the people who are doing the right things, because we can't do it all. There are people who deal with housing and all the other issues, the mental health issues, all the issues that need to be addressed, the immigration, support. And if there's a way that we help the ecosystem to be stronger, so everybody's in that fight, like you're saying. And of course, it's still about like, you gotta shine, right? So we teach these young people, look, Christopher, you talk about college, you don't know this, and I haven't talked about this out loud. So it's going here, right? But I failed 3 out of the 4 first classes when I was at Brown. So I didn't graduate cum laude. I didn't do any of that stuff. I actually, for you, I started making a list of like my loser list and my legend list.
This is your losery list?
This was blank. And as I started writing, I wasn't even confident. It was like on the lower page. And then I realized, oh my God, this is turning into a letter L for losers and legends. But like, look at my loser list, right? And like the first thing I wrote down was like failing 3 out of 4 classes at Brown.
I love it.
I'm like, the fact that I was
You're
able
such a loser, Billy.
I'm such a freaking loser.
You're such a fucking loser.
I'm such a fucking loser. The fact that I was able to graduate with like, a double major was just like, pure luck.
Yeah, well, it was probably a little more than pure luck there, Billy.
No, I mean, so
it's called revenge of those of us who grew up on the island of misfit toys.
I was gonna turn the page. There's so much more to write about here. But
the losery. Yeah.
I mean, so I think every person who gets to overcome, and be just honest about those moments where you're about to crawl back into the cave, that's something we want our young people to have, this safe place to talk about and to share and to get these role models. And we actually have like a whole mentorship program. And one of our board members is a professional business coach. She coaches executives, and she helped us design this mentorship program and this coaching program. So imagine these young people who really deserve this are getting these professional coaches and mentors. So it's not just this like hypothetical and, all respect, right, Christopher, right? It helps to have somebody who looks like you, who just been through it. This young woman we have at Wired, she struggled through her internship program. She got to the other side. She's the first African-American young woman being hired there. And guess what? Employer Wired, now they call us and they say, hey, we have these openings.
Any more of those?
Yeah, right? Even got any more of those?
Right. We'll take 2 more, please.
Exactly. And so since we both got to grow together, and she now is, there, and she's mentoring the next generation. So it's not even me who's saying, look, honey, you could make it. It's this young person who's actually just been through it, who says, look, this is how I just got through it 6 months ago. Let me help you. And the fact that our young people, so going back to fighting, man, that gives me the biggest pride to see our young people, Iman, who I talk about in the TED Talk, and Kayla, and these young people who begin to actually mentor people younger than them. and they're just out of the starting block. They're just getting started. And the fact that they're willing to give back at such a young stage in their life, that's the stuff that gives me some hope, you know? But we've got to, again, create the structure. We've got to create, this is not difficult ecosystem to change. This is a good infrastructure building block, you know, to put into place. And that's where I'm so grateful for our board members and like people out there. It's like anybody who like digs what we're trying to do and is a legend and can help us get to that next place. That's what we need.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
So,
you've created an amazing environment and an amazing example. And it's awesome, Billy. I love what you're doing.
thank you
Anything
so
else we
much.
should touch on, love, before we kick out of this wave?
Well, okay, I got a really important question because I've been trying to binge watch. You need to binge watch everything that we do, by the way. We have a YouTube channel
No,
of our
I know. I've
music
consumed a bunch of it.
and our Vimeo and our studio reel. But yes, so hire us, but and donate to us, and we could use all the help we could get. But I got a real question for you, Christopher. Because you know I've gotten to know Poo Poo and your hens and stuff like that. So it's
Thank
like
you.
it's the age old question. And if this happened to be asked in another podcast, because I didn't get through your 80 something podcast yet. What number am I going to be? By the way, is it a
You
lucky
know,
number?
I don't know what would be a lucky number for you. There's a little randomness in some of it, as you might suspect. We have a well, we haven't talked about it yet. We have a fun thing we're doing on Thanksgiving, so I'm thinking you might be part of that.
Oh, that would be great. That
Yeah,
would be
but
great.
we'll see. Is there a particular? Why do you ask? Let me say it that way.
You know, Chinese people and numbers, whatever. I don't know. There's always lucky numbers. I'll leave it to fate. I'll leave it to
It'll be a lucky number, whatever it is, because
okay.
it's you.
No, because it's you. Okay. Here's the age old question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful question. And if I had to guess, I would say the chicken came first. Because the chickens make the eggs. And so I think the evolutionary Lord put them there. And they've been, you know how old they are?
How old are they? They're dinosaurs. I know
Yeah,
you
they're
talk about them as
T-Rexes.
dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know, how old's the T-Rex? Let's
Pretty
find
freaking
out.
old.
So I think it started with the chicken. I think
And
it started with the chicken.
not
Yeah.
like a billion eggs that were just thrown around and then these chickens showed up and they
Well,
outlived them.
look, I wasn't there, so I don't really know. But so it just says that fossils, they lasted from 67 million to 65 million years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's been a long time since a rock and roll. They're older than the redwoods.
And that's a hell of a lot of hens.
That's a lot of hens over time.
And
That's a lot of hens.
eggs.
And
Well,
that's a lot of.
Well, probably even more eggs since we eat them. Does that mean you don't eat eggs? Do you eat eggs?
No, absolutely eat eggs. I eat them every day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because there's no the hen is going to make the egg. She makes an egg. You know, our girls make roughly 5 eggs a week,
yeah.
and so she's going to make those eggs anyway. There's no, you're not doing anything to her to hurt her. Like
Right.
she's going to make the eggs. No, she is.
Yes, exactly.
And of course, in our case, none of the eggs are fertilized, right? Because we get this question all the time. It's a funny question, and people always ask it. It's just a funny question. She's like, "Well, how do you get eggs if you don't have a rooster?"
Right.
I say, "Well,
the hens make eggs."
Right. The female hen, the female human hen makes eggs, right?
Yeah.
You make eggs. You don't need your husband to make eggs. You need your husband to fertilize an egg, and that's a whole other conversation. Anyway, I digress.
We won't get to the birds and the bees. But no, I was curious, given that you love your hens, and just whether you've thought about or revisited that age-old question.
Which came first?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it started with the chicken. I do. I don't know. I will tell you one thing. It's ridiculous how much I love them. They're awesome. They really are.
The fact that you're doing videos searching for poo poo certainly made me laugh. I,
Yeah.
I
Well, we had this horrifying thing happen a little while ago, which was I was actually over in Silicon Valley, and we live in Santa Cruz, and um, I get a call. I get war dialed from my wife on my phone, so I know something's up. So I call her back. She can't find poo poo, and the garden's enclosed. So, and theoretically they could jump out of the garden, but they're not going to do that. And so,
yeah.
where the fuck's poo poo? And we we can't find her. And she's got the whole neighborhood looking for poo poo. And it turns out poo poo was hiding in the tomatoes.
Tomato plant. I saw
Yeah.
that video. You
So that's
posted it
how
on
she
Facebook.
started. So what happened is, so poo poo is the low girl on the totem pole. She's
Why
number.
is she the low girl?
I don't know. It's just how the pecking order is a very real thing. And so we have six girls and she's number six. And so she gets beat up on a lot, right? Bullying.
Uh-huh.
And they make their eggs in this area of the hen house called the nesting box. And I guess Poo Poo was getting beat up in the nesting box by the other girls. So she decided she was going to make her own area to go nesting. And that was in the tomatoes. But we couldn't find her. She was, at the time, the tomato plants were really super thick. And so she
Yes,
was pretty hidden. And she was quiet. And so there was about an hour and a half of our lives there where we thought
you were
we were
panicked.
we were going to be in a poo-poo-less world.
Oh
Yeah.
no. Wait, does poo poo have freckles?
Um, sort of. If you saw her, she's got these reddy browny feathers
Yes.
with this white gray lacing on them.
Yes.
So she's
Okay.
kind of speckly, I guess you could say.
She's speckly. She
Yeah,
hides
she's not
herself.
super. Yeah, she
She
hides. Yeah.
hides herself. Okay, so I'm poo poo. I used to hide myself in the closet. I dug myself into the dirt. I didn't belong, so I found my own little place. And you know what? I love poo poo. I love you. You're both fighters. She's creating her own field. She's like,
She sure
okay.
is.
And look at her. She becomes the most important because she figured it out and you guys were worried about her and there she is and she's doing her thing.
And all things revolve around poo poo for sure.
So she's the legendary one.
She sure is.
I
And she's
love
funny as
it.
shit too.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. That's so cool. Well, I'm glad to know how much this is integrated into your entire life. It's just thinking about this together with you is such a delight.
Well, thank you, Billy. And your work is so inspiring. I love that you left a highfalutin, super ding dong career on Wall Street to do what you're doing. Um,
Well, it's not highly it's recommended for everybody, but you got to know what you're walking into because like I am just paying off my debt and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. Okay, it's like I was making less money when I graduated from college after dropping law, and I'm so lucky, Christopher. Like seriously, it's taken so many people around me to both tell me I was crazy, including my mother. She disowned me, and she's like, there was this whole thing. It's like, Mom, I want to start a nonprofit. She go, how you make money, no profit, right? It's like, I mean, there's so many stories.
I love it when you do her accent.
It's like, and it's like that's really how she sounded. And so there's so many, like seriously, hundreds of people, my tribe, and the tribe I have chosen, and that have chosen me to help us like get to this place. So I love that you're creating this legends and losers tribe, and I hope we get to be tribe mates for a
for
long, long, long
for a
time.
very long time. That's
Yes.
very sweet of you to say. And it's interesting. This, as a side note, this legends and losers thing. I had no idea. I had no idea it would become a platform to shine a light the way it's become.
I
You
think
know.
it's yeah. Well, it's I feel like, in a lot of ways you're staring in the face what we all face and what this, what I talk about, which is you got to look at yourself in the mirror and look at what you're most afraid of and where you feel you failed and how much of that definition comes from the outside and how much of that comes from yourself. And to the extent you could get your head through it, it's I walk into
Yeah.
a room and going back to race, it's like it's part of my daily life. It's what I am. there's not one room I walk into where I don't notice how many, who's in it, how many women are in it, how many Black people, how many Chinese people, how many white people. I'll scan the room. But then the question becomes, well, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to start making judgments about every person I see and how they're going to behave? And just like you said, you don't want to join a company that works in a certain way. I don't want to live in a world where I have to behave in that way. So it's like, it's a consciousness and it's awareness. And then it's like you eat it, but then you spit it back out. And I want to spit it out so that the world is closer to what I want it to be, which is like, who are the people that I can love, that can love us, that, the sense of belonging is something I feel like we could all do. And just really be human and authentic and have those uncomfortable conversations. Right now,
Yes.
I think it's a good time to have these uncomfortable conversations, and we've got to do it.
Well, and there's a big part of me that like when this whole thing happened this summer in the US and it was just so blatant, and I found it just so fucking shocking. And the thing that really occurred to me, Billy, was we're still fucking talking about this?
Yeah.
Well, we got some shit to do.
Yep.
We got some way more important shit to do than this.
Yep.
Right? We got the greatest humanitarian crisis ever in human history taking a place right now in the Middle East, right? There, but for the grace of God, go I, right? Right? You and I were not born in Syria, right?
No.
And that's the only difference between us and them, right? You didn't pick your parents, and neither did I, and neither did they, right? So we have that shit going on. I mean, you talked about all this crazy fucking weather. There's something, look, I don't give a fuck. There's something weird going on, and we need to get on it, whatever that is. We need to get the fuck on that, right? There are some real problems, right? There's some real problems in the world. We have more slaves on planet Earth than we've ever had. I mean, there's some shit we need to get on as a race, as a human race, right? And so I just look at it and go, and we're still talking about this bullshit?
No, exactly. Well, this is also
like,
why.
you think Chinese people suck? Sit down and have a fucking Zoom with one.
Right.
Like, well, what the fuck are you talking about? And the other thing that drives me crazy is in the United States, I'm going to get really fucking mad here, Billy. Like,
do it.
Read the founding goddamn documents.
Yep.
I'm a naturalized American. I read the damn documents.
Yep.
Equal justice and protection under the law. What part of that don't you understand, you assholes, right? Like, some of these assholes, these racist assholes, wrap themselves in the flag.
Yep.
Okay, well, what's that flag about, you mofo? Do some reading.
That's right.
Right? This is a country of immigrants.
Yep.
My grandfather came to North America, Canada in my case, I guarantee you, I don't know your parents. I know why they came. They came for the same reason my grandparents came.
Yep.
Because shit was fucked up in Scotland after World War II, and they wanted a better life for themselves and their children and their grandchildren, and they thought that they could do that here, right? That's why everybody came to Canada, and that's why everybody came to the United States, and I don't give a fuck who you are. That's what's true.
Yep.
And like, the fact that there's confusion about this blows my mind.
I know. I can't understand it either. And there was this moment, here I am in New York on Columbus Day, Columbus Circle, and looking at this and just thinking about, how this was a celebrated thing. Half of New York closes because of the parade, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, on the West Coast, it's like, you don't even talk about CD, you talk about KD, right? Oh, I digress. You talk about Indigenous Peoples Day, and this whole thing, what you just said, we're all immigrants. We all don't belong here, but we have made ourselves belong. And in my mind, it's like, not only are we talking about the wrong thing, we're wasting fucking time.
Yes, this is a dumb topic.
Wasting
I think this
time.
is a dumb topic.
Yes. And like, my thing is, how do we motivate people to really find who they truly are and get to the heart of why they're on the planet? What is it that they're really meant to do? And hopefully around exactly what you're talking about, which is, the justice and the freedom and why we're all in America. why we're here and why we want to be proud to be here. You know, all the stories that my mom told me, she basically left, she fled, you know, she fled China, which was her homeland. She fled Taiwan and she came to America. And, you know, part of it is she never believed that she mattered. She never felt like she belonged. And every time she went back to these countries, to Taiwan or to China, those were no longer homes. She's a stranger in every single place. And how many people in America feel that? And okay, to the extent you're sixth generation, whatever you are, maybe you've lost that. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of the story that needs to come back, where, you know, we've all got to like feel like if we feel like a stranger, how do we feel like we belong? And what is it that we can do to make sure that we belong in a just environment, in a beautiful place, in this beautiful country, you know, and the beautiful lands. But like you're saying, there's so much to do and there's so much time being wasted.
I can't
And that
wait for the
scares
day
me.
where this is just a dumb topic and we don't have to talk about it
I
anymore.
agree. I'm with you on that one.
You know,
I'm with you on
I
that.
felt that way for so long about gay marriage. It's like, well, aren't
Yeah.
we? We're still talking about this. Like, what?
Yes.
Why do you even give a fuck? Like, what are you talking about? Like, who cares?
Exactly.
Uh,
Seriously.
Actually, it
I'm with
reminds
you.
me of one of my favorite Robin Williams jokes. He was talking about. He says, what's all this talk about same-sex marriage?" He said, "I don't know why gay people want same-sex marriage, because that's what marriage is: the same sex every day. Who the hell wants same-sex marriage?"
Oh my
I
God.
digress. God bless Robin Williams. Man, do we ever
God
miss
bless
him?
Robin Williams.
Oh,
I had I had one of those moments, you know, I moved to San Francisco, I'm jogging the Presidio and I see this very hairy guy jogging this way. And my first reaction was like, man, that's a hairy guy. Cause he's, you know, had a t-shirt or whatever, and there's just like hair everywhere. And he's jogging by and I'm jogging the other way and we're doing this, right? And it's like, oh my God, that's Robin Williams. And I do one of these. I'm like, hairy man was Robin Williams. He's jogging on the Presidio. What the hell?
I love that it feels like almost everybody in the Bay Area has a Robin Williams story, whether it's a
Right?
sighting like that, or I had an opportunity to have dinner with him at a small event many years ago and spent some time with him, and it was just priceless. He was just
He's,
everything you could ever
I can't even
hope and more in
imagine.
person. Yeah, I'd sit
What
down,
a highlight.
have a couple of scotches with him, and we ended up doing dueling. Because he'd shot so many movies in Canada, he loves Canada, and we ended up doing dueling impersonations of Canadian Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, trying to outdo each other as we drank scotch, and I terrified my ex-wife with my bad behavior, because of course sooner or later it devolved into dick jokes, and you know it
Uh-oh.
just got to that place. But anyway, I just what I think is so terrible is, and there's obviously a lot of terrible things about him being gone, but one of them is, you know, we don't get to have those random sightings, and you know, people see
I
him out
know.
jogging, and he was a big
I
bike
know.
rider, and you know, just being part of the, you know, he didn't hide out here. He was part of our community. It was very cool.
No.
He's a very,
And
very charitable man.
totally. And the fact that there was mental health, you know, behind the scenes that wasn't talked about. And actually, with his passing, our young people, our youth were inspired, um, and did a whole episode around mental health.
Hmm.
And one of our young youth media producers, Stella Gutierrez, she was a kid, and she had the courage to do a video and just talk about her having OCD, after his death. And she actually told us, and she told the camera before she told her mom, you know, and her parents, which was like crazy. So at the premiere, she made this video, and she, at the very last minute, it's like, Billy, I can't premiere it. I can't do this. I can't tell the world. I'm like, you've already done it. And just, you know, it's your choice whether you want to premiere this. But, you know, I think you've actually gone through the hardest part, which is already just talking about it and putting it on video. So, you know, just think about how many people you could influence. So she released a film. She's award winning. You know, she got placed in so many different film festivals, and she had adult OCD, you know, support groups get together and actually saw her video And like this kind of stuff goes back to the power of story. And it just makes me cry when I think about it. It's like, they came to her. She's like, man, if I had the courage to talk about my OCD when I was a teenager like you, my life would have been so different. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. And, she's 13, 14 years old when she did this, right? And now fast forward, I was just texting her because she needs a hard drive and because she's now in college. So she's going to UC Santa Cruz. This is her first year.
She's a banana slug.
She's a banana slug, and she's taking a
love it.
photography class, and she's majoring in film. And
Oh,
you know
wow.
what?
Wow.
It's
What a
just gonna be
place and
the
what a
beginning.
time to be doing that.
Yep. It's just going to be the beginning for her,
That's so great.
But it's that kind of thing going back to like ecosystem. We have these kids now in college and they need support and scholarships and equipment. Again, that's like my dream would be I could give every kid graduating from our program a laptop, a hard drive. Everything is now subscription. So getting like the Adobe Creative Suite, like how do we get these kids to pay for it? And how do we equip them so they could keep growing? So there's a huge wish list of like going back to ecosystem and building infrastructure that we certainly need a lot of help for. But Stella, Robin Williams, that's like one creative white dude inspiring a young Latina. And now, look at who she's going to get to inspire with her stories.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I love it, Billy. You're awesome. I love you.
You're awesome. I love
Anything
you
else?
too. I feel like I could talk to you forever. So we'll just have to like virtual hug each other and
give your very handsome Italian sexy husband a big hug for me. Speaking of hugs, it's been too long since I saw him.
Yes. And a big shout out. Thank you, Dushka, for introducing us from One Legend.
We love you, Dushka.
Yes. Thank you for introing us. It was great fun. I don't want it to be over. So you're the one who has to.
Well, I think we're probably at a logical kick out point, so we should probably kick out. And I know you got shit to do in New York, and
yes,
but yeah, I could talk to you
do.
forever too, Billy.
Yes, it's great.
It reminds me of, that great Richard Bach quote where he says, "Rarely do people of the same family grow up under the same roof."
Yes, no, it's true.
Right, and so I think we're all looking for members of our tribe, whether they're blood members or not, and per Richard Bach, often they're not.
Yes, no, totally. And, yesterday being inspired by Springsteen doing his story on Broadway. Wow.
Oh, did you go see that?
Yeah, went to go see that. Like talk about him talking about himself being a misfit and not fitting in, but that first experience of seeing the guitar and buying it, talking about his dad and his mom. It was so beautiful. Just watching his artistry and just hearing him tell his story. And he's a story lover,
Yeah.
and God, talk about changing the world.
He has songs that are novels. Like, I don't know how the fuck you remember all those lyrics. He must, I don't know how the,
power to
Thunder Road has a lot of lyrics in it.
Screen door slams.
Yeah. And actually that's the craziest thing, right? Of course,
yes.
I've seen him multiple times. I'm a huge fan, have been since I was a kid.
Yes.
Like most of us, but you go see him and everybody in the audience knows every lyric to like these songs that are like War and Peace, for fuck's sakes.
Exactly. And just, so talk about like the power of story. That was just
to
be reminded of that by talk about a legend. So listen, if you ever get him on the show, can you please invite me?
Yes. And I'm sure he's a big fan of the show. He's always he's been emailing wanting to get on, so maybe we should let him on now.
Yeah, I think he deserves it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he does. All right, Billy.
Much love. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You are spectacular.
So are you.
Wow. Thank you again, Billy. What an extraordinary dialogue. It makes me happy to know you're in the world doing the work that you and the folks at BAYCAT are doing. If you love this episode as much as I did, why not share it with somebody or 10,000 people in your world right now who you think Billy's story and BAYCAT's story would make a difference to? Now, it's been a while since we did some shout outs, so I'd like to thank some people who've been doing some wonderful things. So Danny Gonzalez, thank you so much for your LinkedIn note. Dave Conlin and I used to work together years ago, and he reached out to me on social media. He also posted an extraordinary review of Play Bigger on Amazon.com. I'll just read a little bit of it. And Dave, thank you so much. I love it. He says, quote, "To know which things you need to nail, then you need to get to read this book, or get it really quickly. Or get it really, oh, shit, I'm fucking this up." He says, "It shows you which things you really need to nail. Then you need to read this book or get really, really lucky. Like win the lottery lucky, or read this book or be lucky. That being said, if you're a competitor, then this book totally sucks and it's a complete waste of time." So thank you so much, Dave. It's great that you're reading Play Bigger and you're with us on Legends and Losers. Noel Soberman for an awesome shout out on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. My friend Garrett Matsuda for an absolutely legendary review of Legends and Losers on iTunes. Grateful that you wrote it, and more grateful, Garrett, that you feel that way. My buddy Sonny Kumar. Wow, Sonny, you have blown me away. He wrote an extraordinary LinkedIn recommendation and an iTunes review of Play Bigger, of Legends and Losers, and Amazon review of Play Bigger. So he wrote 3 reviews: LinkedIn, iTunes, and Amazon. And on the Amazon review, Play Bigger, he writes, quote, "Brilliant book about how to think/do differently and dominate the category, not just do something better." Sonny, thank you so much. And then Marcio Galli for your wonderful LinkedIn note. Also discovered recently, there's been a lot of talk about Legends and Losers on question and answer site Quora. And I guess it shouldn't be a surprise because our first guest and our first 3-time guest, Dushka Zapata, is one of the queens of Quora. She's an extraordinary author. I think one of the best authors and the most important authors in the world today. And it has come to our attention that people on Quora have been saying very nice things about Legends and Losers. So in no particular order, want to shout out to Kelly Richards, Milos Kuprik, I hope I'm saying that right, Nicole Adams, Tracy Morgan, Marlena Dickinson, Dominica Lauren, Aaron Simpson, Lisa Richards, Tobias Shelby, Natalie Jones, and Hector Pinto, all for saying wonderful things about Legends and Losers on Quora.com. And I want to highlight Hector's comment because I thought it was so great. He said, quote, "I rarely don't have much time on my hands because I manage a small business, so I don't even look for podcasts that much. A friend of mine was convincing me to start listening to Legends and Losers for a long time, so I decided to give it one because of him. If someone told me that I would spend another 6 hours listening to these guys, I wouldn't have believed him for a second. But that was the case." Then he goes on to say, "If you're looking for advice in this area or just want to get motivated in general, then give them a try." Thanks, Hector. We really appreciate your shout out, and everyone else for sharing Legends and Losers on Quora, on social media, on billboards, on flyers, on underwear, or wherever else you're sharing Legends and Losers. All right. We would like to thank our good friends at BAYCAT. They exist to end equality and racism through powerful storytelling. Check out baycat.org. Equity Directory, connecting startups and talent to the resources they need to build a legendary business at Equity Directory. HarperCollins book, instant classic, Play Bigger. When I had a hand in writing, how pirates, dreamers, and innovators create and dominate markets. We want to remind you that Play Bigger makes an awesome Hanukkah gift. OneLifeFullyLive.org. Dream, plan, and live your best life. We're the nonprofit trying to make a difference. Check us out, OneLifeFullyLive.org. Our good friends at NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP. Check them out at netsuite.com. The incredible people at Mint Systems, MYNT Systems. Green buildings that help you make money at mintwithaysystems.com. The awesome read, themarketingjournal.org. It's what legendary marketing people read. Check them out. One of my favorite podcasts, Stop Riding the Pine, the podcast with our friend. Some people have called him the nicest man in podcasting, the legendary Jamie J. And then Fathom Marketing, the marketing firm that accelerates revenue at fathomdelivers.com. We would like to remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love it, and we would love you just a little more if you shared the shit out of it We have to remind you that today's information is provided you solely for informational purposes. All rights do remain disturbed. We must warn you that the producers of this oddcast may have been consuming libations. And we must tell you, Legends and Losers has been known to cause increases in post-adolescent cranial development. Check it out. Legends and Losers makes an outstanding Hanukkah present. Hands up, chin down. Gord Downey from the Tragically Hip was right. Support your favorite charities with your time and lots of your cash. Thank you, Candy Dandy. Love you, Mom and Dad. Hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together. Beautiful baby Beatrice, my dinosaur sitting on my knee here. Love you, baby B. Our deepest apologies today go out to Vladimir Putin, president of Russia. Sorry, Vladimir, we just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Thank you for the gift of your time, and we'll see you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.